Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to the second day of India Digital Summit. Today, we are here in this discussion on the topic of safeguarding creativity, the fight against piracy on digital platforms. I have alongside me Mr. Arpan Banerjee. He's the India representative of Alliance for Creativity and Entertainment. Welcome, Arpan. I am Abhishek Dhoreliya, the founder and CEO of MarkScan, which is Asia Pacific's and Middle East's largest digital protection agency, with a team of over 300 people based in Delhi. Before we get into the discussion, Arpan, for a brief background from my side, I think one of the first things to understand is why does piracy happen? Gone are the days when piracy was all about a couple of friends sharing an interesting file between themselves. Today, it is an organized global crime syndicate which makes its money through advertisement, and advertisement revenue which it generates by diverting people onto their illegal platforms. In fact, one of the recent studies estimated this global crime syndicate to be $75 billion globally. The same study unfortunately highlights that India, alongside USA, accounts for the highest amount of traffic, remember, which is the source for the advertisement revenue. So India is one of the top contributors of traffic to these illegal platforms. What this results into is not only a loss to the industry, but also harm to the society in general. I'm sure Arpan will talk about this in detail. Just to give again some sense of scale of this issue or of this problem, in the last 12 months, just in our shop by MarkScan, we have identified and actioned upon more than 30 million infringements. So 30 million separate cases of piracy across genres of digital content. This was taking place across 60,000 plus websites, across 40 plus social media platforms, more than 150 IPTVs, not to mention messenger platforms. Given this background and context, what I would request for me and Arpan to focus on two particular aspects. Number one are the challenges which are faced in addressing this criminal issue. And second is, how does this money-making machine for criminals be compromised, or the revenue chain which is fueling this piracy? How can that be thwarted? Idea, Arpan, if by the end of our discussion today we can come out with some actionable items where IMI, which has given this opportunity for our discussion, is used as a platform to take forward some measures by the industry to address some of these key issues. So with this, Arpan, over to you. And in the beginning, why don't you please introduce ACE, or the Alliance for Creativity and Entertainment, which is a key global body in fight against piracy.
Thank you very much, Abhishek. Good morning, everyone. Let me begin by thanking the IAMAI for inviting me, Sonali, Chitrita, and her team. So as Abhishek said, I should probably start by telling you a bit about ACE. For those of you who are not very familiar with ACE, we are the leading anti-piracy association in the world right now. And we have over 55 members. Some of these members board members. They're on our governing board. These are Amazon, Apple TV, NBC Universal, Netflix, Sony, Paramount, and Warner Brothers. These are our governing members, but we also have other members from all over the world. Was I audible in what I said earlier? Or?
I think pretty much.
Okay. So what's interesting is that our membership is drawn not just from the US and Europe and the developed world, but also several emerging economies. We have members from countries like Brazil, Argentina, Thailand, and even Georgia, the country of Georgia. And I think it's interesting because it shows that piracy is not exclusively a first world problem. It affects emerging economies as well. I should also mention that ACE is supported by the Motion Picture Association. We rely on their collective expertise and resources. And the content protection arm of the Motion Picture Association reinforces this support. And the chairperson of ACE, Mr. Charles Rifkin, is also the chairperson of the Motion Picture Association. Now, our vision really is to reduce digital piracy and protect the legal content protection market. And we do this by targeting, quote unquote, the worst of the worst piracy networks. And we do this by relying very heavily on data. We have a very large team, global team, that is constantly compiling data on the worst of the worst piracy networks, and we identify them, and we target them. And one of the main advantages of ACE is that it reduces duplication on the part of our members, and therefore it gives them a cost-efficient enforcement option. And once we identify the worst of the worst, we use a lot of methods. We send cease and desist letters, civil litigation, criminal referrals to law enforcement, so very broad range of methods. So that's really a brief overview about ACE.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Arpan. So I think that sets the context beautifully for us to maybe focus on the piracy revenue chain, which we discussed. As we know, huge amounts of money involved. Platforms, these illegal platforms, by criminals making millions of dollars in a year, some of the larger ones. Even the small platforms are financially profitable, more than profitable. Maybe, Arpan, you can help us understand some of these issues with cases which you have dealt with recently. ACE, as you mentioned, is the globally leading organization in addressing some of these syndicates. So maybe some of these examples which are closer to our geography will help highlight this issue even further.
Sure. So ACE is, I know we've been tracking piracy networks all over the world now. And what we've seen and what we've confirmed is that the reason people engage in piracy is because piracy is a very profitable exercise. And it's especially profitable because the capital and labor that you need to carry out a piracy operation is not very high. In fact, we've come across very large, globally large piracy networks operating from India in small towns and semi-rural areas. Not Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, but in the hinterland and all over the country, north, south, east, and west. Now, in terms of how piracy networks make money, well, there are two main models. One is through subscription fee. So, for example, to subscribe to a legal OTT platform, you would have to pay X rupees a month. And a lot of the piracy networks offer the content at lower prices. And the other way in which piracy networks profit is through placement of ads. These are typically high-risk businesses whose advertisements you won't see on legitimate websites. clicking on these advertisements is also extremely unsafe, and we'll come to that later. But this is how piracy networks mainly make money. Now, there are lots of cases we worked on. Some I can share with you, some I can't share with you, but I'll tell you three case studies that I can share with you from India. The first involves a pretty notorious network called Extra Movies. And Extra Movies offers thousands of movies and TV shows, Hollywood, Bollywood, and beyond. And it used to register 1.3 million visitors a month globally, which is huge. Now, what's interesting is that the Delhi High Court had actually passed a site blocking order against Extra Movies in a civil action, directing the website be blocked. But the website was still continuing even after the blocking order. So then we tracked down the operator. We tracked down the operator. He was based in Delhi. And we found that he employed a range of revenue generation methods. One is through advertisements of gambling websites. And this is something you'll often see on piracy websites, because these are not, these are what are called high-risk businesses. They can't advertise everywhere. And the other way in which he was earning revenue is through a coupon purchase system. So if you purchase a coupon, then you'll get certain privileges on the website. And he was making a lot of money. So we tracked him down to Delhi, and we approached him through our local councils. And he initially denied any knowledge, but then once it became clear that we had the evidence, he admitted to his wrongdoing, and he signed an undertaking saying that he would not do so again. Remember that this is in breach of a high court order. And he also handed over all his administrative passwords to us. And, having his passwords obviously allowed us to see how he was making money. And yeah, they do make significant sums. The second case study that I can share with you is of a website called watchwrestling.ai. So this is a site that that initially started by offering pirated broadcasts and recordings of wrestling matches. So WWE, MMA, these are of course popular worldwide. But later on they expanded to offer other kinds of sports, boxing, Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL. Again, very, very popular globally. They had 250 million global visits a year, massive. And we again tracked down the operator to Saharanpur in Uttar Pradesh. And this brings me back to the point that I was making, is that they're all over the country, often in tier 2, tier 3 cities. And like in the case of Extra Movies, this gentleman, if I can call him a gentleman, signed an undertaking, and he handed us his administrative domains. Again, significant revenue generation through ads. Now, the third study is something that is ongoing. I can't share the name of the network, but it is a piracy cyber locker, and I'm happy to talk about such rogue actors later on. A video hosting site that is huge globally. It averages something like 175 million visits a month. And they're funded by ads again, gambling, pornography, but also through account registration. And this is what, this kind of rogue entity is what is increasingly described as quote unquote piracy as a service. And I'm happy to discuss this later on again. But to summarize, in a nutshell, piracy is very, very profitable. It requires low capital, low labor, and they're making significant amounts of money. There've also been cases in the US where they've tracked down internet pirates who own, Lamborghinis and Ferraris. So yeah, that's the scale of it.
Very interesting, Arpan. And I think it's quite critical to realize that the examples that Arpan shared are very close to us. I mean, they are based in our homes, making significant amounts of money. I think, Arpan, we can agree that while they might be selling subscription or coupons, it's largely funded by advertisement revenue which they are generating. These advertisements, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, end up on these websites inadvertently including by global brand owners, global advertisers, because while they are chasing eyeballs, there are shortcomings in mechanisms to establish whether that particular platform is legal or is carrying out illegal activities. This is what is called piracy revenue chain. And while, Arpan, I think it's quite obvious the money which is lost to the industry, this is money lost. I think what is not very obvious to all of us is the impact. All right, so the money lost to industry is also money lost to the government by taxes and so on and so forth. So I think money lost to industry and government might be more obvious to us. But there's also a significant threat or a cost paid by society as a whole. I think this happens in multiple ways. Why don't you help us understand the threat to society as a whole, how this kind of emerges out of such piracy?
Sure. Thank you, Abhishek. So the obvious way in which piracy affects society is that it leads to revenue loss for the legal content media industry, which is huge in India. And it also leads to a loss of jobs. And there is a report by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. It's dated, but still relevant, which acknowledges this. And it's really obvious if you think about it. But there is also another impact that perhaps isn't discussed as often, which is that it also is very harmful to consumers. And I'll give you one very topical and important example. We at ACE recently commissioned ISB, the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad, and a professor from a leading university in Australia who specializes in cybersecurity to track the extent of malware on piracy sites. Now, you'll often see a lot of, dodgy links and on piracy sites and pop-ups that come up. And we try to measure just how much of a threat this is. So we first started out, or rather the ISB and the professor first started out by conducting a survey. They engaged YouGov, which is a leading market research agency, and interviewed consumers. And a large number of consumers perceived malware to have a link with these sites. And then they tried to compare perception with reality. And they saw that, let's say, if the degree of perception of malware coming from piracy sites is X, the actual perception is a lot higher than X, exponentially higher. Now, I'll tell you a bit about the methodology. What the researchers did is that they compiled through data a list of the most popular piracy sites and also less popular but still frequently visited piracy sites, which they labeled as mid-range piracy sites. So top piracy sites and mid-range piracy sites. And another category of websites that they looked at was designated as scam piracy sites. Now, what's the difference between a piracy site and a scam piracy site? Well, a piracy site is a site where you can actually view the movie in question. A scam piracy site is a site where you where you often don't get the movie. What happens is that they tempt you or clickbait you into clicking something using a thumbnail or using a part of the film. And once you actually click there or you enter your personal information, then you don't often get access to the movie. They're out there to steal your data, personal data, financial data, and so on. And what the study found is that the extent of malware on scam piracy sites is the highest, and that's understandable. But also, the extent of malware on piracy sites is also very, very high. The methodology used is that they entered the URLs on VirusTotal, which is a sort of gold standard and very well-respected database or repository of viruses and malware. If you enter a URL, it'll give you the risk profile. And then they entered the URLs of normal websites, right, a control sample. And then they found the degree of malware is significantly high on piracy websites and even higher on scam piracy websites, and of course much higher than the perception. Now, just think about our country today. I mean, all types of age groups and all types of people from different demographies access the internet from mobile phones. And, just think about the risks that they could pose if they access such websites through their phones or even at their workplaces. So I should also mention that the report hasn't been launched as yet, but we're launching it in Mumbai on the 19th of March at the US consulate. If anyone here is interested in attending our launch event, please contact me, please give me your card, and we'll get back to you. So yeah, it's on the 19th of March in the morning in Mumbai at the US consulate close by in BKC. So please give me your card if you're interested in attending.
Thanks, Arpan. I think this, what you shared with us just now establishes it quite clearly that not only are there huge sums of money involved, money made illegally by these pirates, which is money out of pocket of the industry, of the government, but it has also severe tangible and intangible impact on the society as a whole. In addition to malware, of course, there are ads about gambling, about pornography, about spurious drugs, counterfeit medicines, etc., which are found aplenty on these websites. These websites could also be accessed by children looking for some content they want to watch and get exposed to all these ill effects, which are a secondary implication in addition to the money which is lost, which as you shared is basically jobs lost, livelihoods lost. I think it's also worth sharing that addressing this piracy revenue chain has been one of the top agendas of governments, industry associations globally. Top of mind, couple of case studies which are best aligned to what we are discussing. One of them belongs to an industry-led initiative out of US. This is an industry-led initiative consisting of advertisers, of content owners, of digital ad agencies, which try and build a mechanism by which the advertisers can identify such spurious websites and not put money on those websites. The critical point here is that these websites also scam the advertiser themselves. So while the advertiser might be thinking that they are meeting their matrices of CPA, CPM, what they often find out that in addition to all these house scams, the advertisers themselves are scammed as well. Second initiative which comes to mind is in terms of a national police force taking the lead. This happens to be in UK, working with the industry, having launched an operation called Operation Creative, whose sole purpose is to stop the flow of these funds. In fact, they come out with regular reports quantifying the amount of money which they have stopped from flowing into these websites. Now, any of these initiatives, Arpan, I think would require cooperation from various industry members, the ecosystem supporting such delivery. I think we can all agree that IMI, given the wide range of its members in terms of not only content owners directly, but also ecosystem supporting digital platforms, ecosystem which is going to be quite critical if you want to stop the spread of this menace, is quite well placed to maybe initiate such action in India, because there is no such action taking place right now. I think in addition to such an initiative, I think the last point we would like to hear from you, having covered piracy revenue chain in detail. So what are the other challenges, very quickly, if you can highlight, which are faced by the industry in stopping such illegal access of content?
Sure. I think the most important challenges that our members face, and I think this is also, most of you in the room would agree with me, is the lack of prioritization given to piracy by government and law enforcement in India. It's just not me saying it. There are reports of the Indian government itself which says it. And even more recently, there have been reports of parliamentary standing committees which say it. I think the main challenge for industry and bodies like the IAMAI is to make a case why piracy deserves to be given greater priority. I think one very cogent reason is that there are linkages between piracy and other forms of cybercrime. I gave you an illustration. And of course, the revenue leakage being caused to industry. And it's interesting that sometime, I think this was during the pandemic, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Commerce, which is, as you know, a bipartisan committee, published a report where it recommended the establishment of a central enforcement committee, which would have representatives of different ministries, and they would help coordinate anti-piracy efforts. I think that would be a very, very positive step if implemented.
Thanks, Arpan. I think, given the discussion that we have had thus far, I'll try and summarize the key points which appear to be the priority. Please help me buttress if I miss anything. So, I think it's clearly established that piracy is not for fun. It is serious crime involving huge sums of money. These losses impact not only the industry, the country, but society as a whole. There are best cases or case studies available globally, which can, if not eliminate, thwart this menace by hitting the pirates where it hurts most, which is the money which they are making. IMI, and the reason both of us are sitting here is because both of us strongly feel that IMI is perfectly positioned to take such an initiative. As you highlighted, government itself has come out with various reports highlighting the menace. Maybe government can get involved in IMI as the platform to launch first such initiative in the country. And in addition to a lot of measures which individual content owners take in a tactical sense, I think by the end of this discussion now we can firmly establish that industry-wide initiatives to curb this flow of funds to this criminal ecosystem is one of the top priorities which should be focused upon using IMI as a platform. request you to please highlight any other aspect which you might
I
want.
think you've covered it perfectly. I think I hope that the IAMI can take the agenda forward.
I think with this, we can thank IMI and the very dedicated team of IMI for this discussion, this opportunity. As you can see, me and Arpan have both clearly put forward action items which we hope will be taken forward at certain stage under IMI's umbrella and with the support of the industry as a whole.